A successful CEO goes undercover to uncover corruption in his company. After exposing the truth, he fires the unethical employees and rebuilds a business on a foundation of integrity and trust. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. James Tyler sat in his corner office, overlooking the city skyline, the empire he had built from the ground up. As the CEO of Tyler Properties, one of the most successful real estate firms in the country, he had everything: wealth, power, and a reputation for excellence. But behind the polished image of his company, troubling whispers had reached his ears. Clients were complaining about hidden fees. Employees were allegedly mistreating customers, and worst of all, there were rumors of embezzlement. James prided himself on being a hands-on leader, but somewhere along the way, he had trusted the wrong people to run his company. Now, he had no choice but to find out the truth himself, and there was only one way to do that. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant, Marcus. "Cancel my meetings for the next 2 weeks," he said. Marcus hesitated. "Sir, you have a board meeting, a conference with investors." "I don't care," James interrupted. "I need to go undercover." There was silence on the other end. Then Marcus chuckled. "Undercover? As what?" James leaned back in his chair, a smirk forming. "A new intern." Within hours, the transformation began. The Millionaire CEO ditched his tailored suits for a wrinkled dress shirt and cheap slacks. He shaved his neatly trimmed beard to look younger, added fake glasses, and even wore scuffed-up shoes. His sleek luxury car replaced with a modest sedan. His new identity? Jay Collins, a former retail worker trying to break into real estate. That evening, he walked into his own company, not as James Tyler, the powerful CEO, but as Jay, the nervous new guy hoping for a job. The receptionist barely looked at him before shoving paperwork his way. No warm welcome, no professionalism, just indifference. "Fill this out and wait," she said without a glance. James took a deep breath. If this was how they treated potential employees, he could only imagine how they treated clients. Tomorrow, his investigation would begin, and by the end of it, heads would roll. James arrived at the office early, eager to blend in and observe the daily operations firsthand. The moment he stepped through the glass doors of Tyler Properties, he could sense the toxicity in the air. Employees lounged at their desks, scrolling through their phones, sipping coffee and gossiping. Hardly the image of a high-performing real estate firm. No one paid attention to him. No warm greetings, no introductions. He was just another nameless face in the office. A tall, arrogant man strutted toward him. "Rick, the so-called top-performing sales manager." "You must be the new intern," Rick said, eyeing James up and down with clear disapproval. "Let me make one thing clear. Stay out of my way, do what you're told, and don't ask questions." James nodded, masking his irritation. He followed Rick through the sales floor, watching as agents manipulated clients over the phone. "Listen," Rick whispered, covering the phone's mic, "these people are desperate to buy a home. We jack up the prices, throw in some bogus processing fees, and tell them it's a limited-time deal. They'll pay whatever we tell them." James clenched his jaw. So, the rumors were true. His employees were scamming people. At lunchtime, he sat in the break room, pretending to scroll through his phone while secretly listening. That's when he overheard something even worse. "Lisa left early again," a woman muttered. "She's barely here, but somehow she still gets bonuses." Lisa, the office manager. James had already noticed her cold, dismissive attitude. He had watched her bark orders at employees while doing almost no work herself. She had snapped at the receptionist, Mia, for asking about overdue paperwork, then disappeared into her office to take a call. Speaking of Mia, James had noticed how overworked and underappreciated she was. She was polite, efficient, and handled multiple tasks, but no one seemed to respect her. Later that day, James casually asked how long she had been working there. 3 years, she said with a tired smile. "And you love it here?" James asked. She hesitated. Then, in a lower voice, she said, I used to, but it's hard when you're overlooked. I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years, even though I do more than my job description. Meanwhile, Lisa gives herself raises every 6 months. James fought to keep his expression neutral. By the end of the day, he had seen enough. His so-called top employees were cutting corners, mistreating hard-working staff, and scamming clients. His company, his empire, was being run by liars and thieves. James walked out of the office with one thought on his mind. This ends tomorrow. By his 3rd day undercover, James had seen enough corruption to make his blood boil. But today, they push him too far. It started early in the morning when Lisa, the office manager, stormed into the break room. Jay, she snapped, making sure everyone heard. Since you're new and don't have important things to do, go pick up my dry cleaning. James blinked. I thought I was here to learn real estate. Lisa scoffed. And I thought interns were supposed to follow orders. She tossed a receipt onto the table. Be back in 30 minutes. Oh, and grab me a coffee, too. James clenched his jaw but nodded. He had to play along for now. As he walked past the sales floor, he overheard Rick in a heated conversation with a client on the phone. Sir, I don't know what you're talking about, Rick said, forcing a laugh. The final price is what we agreed on. If you can't afford it, maybe this isn't the right place for you. James paused, listening. The client must have been arguing because Rick sighed dramatically. Listen, buddy, this is business. I don't have time for sob stories. Either sign the contract or lose the deal. Your choice. James gritted his teeth. He wanted to rip the phone from Rick's hand and tell the client the truth, that he was being scammed. Instead, James took a deep breath and walked away. He needed to be smart about how he exposed them. Later that evening, when everyone had left, James stayed behind. He had access to the company's financial records through his CEO credentials, and now was the perfect time to check them. What he found made his stomach turn. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were missing. Payments were being funneled into fake vendor accounts. Bogus charges were being added to client contracts. And who approved them all? Rick, Lisa, and a few others who thought they were untouchable. James leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen, his hands curled into fists. His employees, people he trusted, were stealing from him, mistreating his clients, and ruining the company's reputation. Enough was enough. Tomorrow, everything will change. The next morning, James stood in front of the mirror in his office, staring at his reflection. Gone was the scruffy intern look, the cheap clothes, the messy hair. Today, he was returning as James Tyler, the CEO. He adjusted his tailored suit, fixed his tie, and let out a deep breath. It was time to take control. He walked to the conference room, where his employees had gathered for a routine meeting. The sales team was chatting loudly, the office staff was distracted by their phones, and Rick was making obnoxious jokes with a few of the other managers. None of them noticed. James slipped in quietly and took his seat at the head of the table. All right, everyone, Lisa said, waving her hand to quiet the group. Let's get this meeting over with. She barely looked at him, assuming he was just another intern still in the Jay Collins disguise. But when James stood up and removed his glasses, a collective gasp echoed through the room. Wait a second, what? Rick blurted, his voice rising in shock. I think it's time we have a real conversation, James said, his voice calm but firm. My name is James Tyler, CEO of this company. For a moment, the room was completely still. Shock registered on every face, from the highest-ranking manager to the low-level employees who hadn't even realized the company's owner was right under their noses. Rick's face went pale. Tyler? No way. We thought you were just what? James interrupted, his eyes narrowing. Just an intern? A pawn in your little game. The silence stretched out before James continued. I've spent the last week here, observing every one of you, how you treat clients, how you treat each other, how you treat this company. And I don't like what I've seen." Rick opened his mouth to protest, but James held up his hand. "I know about the fraudulent transactions, the fake vendor accounts, the overcharging of clients. I know about the way you've been stealing from this company, and I know how you've mistreated the hard-working employees who care about this place." He turned to face Lisa. "And you, Lisa? Let's talk about your favoritism, your bullying, and your blatant disregard for company rules." Lisa looked like she might pass out. James paused, letting his words sink in. "I gave all of you a chance to show me who you were, and you've shown me exactly what I needed to see." He turned toward the rest of the room. "But for those of you who have been loyal, who have been trying to do your jobs with integrity, you're the ones who will remain here. From this point forward, things will change. There will be accountability. There will be transparency. And anyone who doesn't agree with that can leave." Immediately, Rick stood, his face red with rage. "You can't do this. We've built this company together." James leaned forward, his voice cold. "You built nothing. You destroyed it. And now, I'm taking it back." One by one, James called out the people responsible for the mess, firing Rick, Lisa, and the others who had been caught in the web of lies. No second chances. They were all escorted out of the building, and their positions were immediately terminated. Once the room was clear of the corrupt employees, James turned to the remaining staff, who were still in shock. "For those of you who are staying, I have one message. This company will thrive again, and it will do so with honesty, respect, and loyalty. If you're willing to work for that, welcome back." James had made his decision. It wasn't just about firing the bad apples. It was about creating a new beginning for Tyler Properties. And he wasn't going to stop until his company was the best in the industry. The dust had barely settled after the massive shakeup, but James Tyler knew that the real work was only just beginning. As he stood in his office overlooking the city, he reflected on what he had done over the past week. It had been brutal. Removing the people he had trusted, dismantling the broken systems they had put in place. But it had been necessary. Now, Tyler Properties had a chance to rebuild. The next day, James called a company-wide meeting. This time, everyone who remained was eager to hear what he had to say. The room was full of anxious faces, some hopeful, some uncertain. James stepped into the conference room, his presence commanding immediate attention. The room fell silent. "I've seen what this company can become," he began. "I've also seen the worst it can be. But today, I want to focus on the future. And that future starts with you." He turned to the remaining employees, Mia, the receptionist who had been overlooked for too long, Kyle, the talented young agent who had never been given a chance, Sarah, the accountant who had quietly protested the corruption for months. They were the heart of the company, the ones who genuinely cared. And they would be the foundation upon which he would build a new empire. "For too long," James continued, "this company has been run by greed, favoritism, and dishonesty. I've seen the emails, the contracts, the lies. But that stops today. From now on, we operate with transparency, with integrity, and with a respect for the people we work with and for." Mia, who had been stuck in a low-level position with no recognition, stood straighter in her chair. She had been with Tyler Properties for 3 years, but until today, it had felt like she was invisible. James had noticed her, though. She had been loyal, worked tirelessly, and never gave up even when others took advantage of her. James turned toward her. "Mia, you're going to manage the front office from now on. I've seen your dedication. I've seen how you've kept things running while others wasted time. You deserve it." Mia's eyes widened in disbelief, but a smile began to form. "Thank you, Mr. Tyler. I won't let you down." Kyle, the young agent who had been ignored for too long by the old management, was next. "Kyle, I know you've been with us for a while, but you've never been given the tools or respect you deserve. Starting today, you'll be heading the sales team. You've got the talent, the drive, and now you've got the chance to lead." Kyle, stunned, stood up and shook James' hand. "I won't let you down, sir. I'll give it my all. James smiled, nodding. I know you will. The meeting continued, with James promoting others who had earned their place through hard work and loyalty. Those who had been passed over for promotions, ignored, or mistreated were finally given the recognition they deserved. When the meeting ended, James walked through the office, observing his employees, his team, in action. There was a noticeable change in the atmosphere. The office no longer felt like a battlefield. People were talking openly, collaborating, and working with a renewed sense of purpose. The phone rang, and Mia answered it with a smile. The clients who had been swindled by Rick and the others were being contacted personally by James himself, ensuring their issues were resolved. There would be no more lies. James was putting in the work to restore what had been broken, and it wasn't just about firing the bad apples. It was about earning back the trust of his clients, his team, and himself. Tyler Properties wasn't just going to survive, it was going to thrive. As James stood at his office window, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. His decision to go undercover had been painful, but necessary. The company was on its way back, and this time, it was going to be built on a foundation of trust, hard work, and integrity. James knew this was only the beginning. Weeks passed, and the transformation at Tyler Properties was undeniable. The change James had envisioned was becoming a reality. The office, once filled with tension and distrust, now buzzed with energy and collaboration. New contracts were being signed. Clients were singing praises, and employees who had been overlooked for far too long were thriving in their new roles. James was no longer just a CEO. He was a leader, respected not only for his wealth and success, but for the integrity and vision he had instilled in his company. His employees now saw him as someone who would fight for them just as fiercely as he would fight for the success of the business. One afternoon, James stood in the lobby, watching as Mia spoke with a new client. Kyle presented a deal to a group of investors, and Sarah reviewed financial reports with a smile on her face. For the first time in years, he felt truly proud of his company. A knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. It was Mia, holding a file in her hands. "Mr. Tyler," she said, a smile on her face. "I just wanted to thank you. I never imagined I'd be in this position." Leading the front office, having a say in the direction of the company, James smiled, setting his pen down. "Mia, you earned it. You've been here longer than anyone, working without recognition. It's your time now. You've helped make this company what it is today." She nodded, her eyes shining. "We all have. Thanks to you." James leaned back in his chair, his gaze turning to the window. Outside, the city stretched out before him. The same city where Tyler Properties had once been on the brink of ruin. But now, it was thriving. He had rebuilt it from the ground up, not with money or power, but with honesty, trust, and a commitment to doing things the right way. The scandals were behind them, and the company's future was brighter than ever. But James knew the real victory wasn't in the success they had achieved. It was in the way they had done it. He had learned the hard way that power without integrity was nothing, and with the right team, anything was possible. As he watched his employees working together, he knew this wasn't just about rebuilding a business. It was about building a legacy that would outlive him and be remembered for the values it stood for. Tyler Properties had been reborn, and with it, a new chapter in James Tyler's life had begun. Do you think James made the right decision by firing the corrupt employees, or could he have handled the situation differently? If you were in James' position, how would you have approached the situation with the employees? Please let me hear your thoughts in the comment below. And if you have not subscribed yet to our channel, please do that now. Thank you.